Good day everyone. So we've always talked about endgame on this channel, so I think today let's look at an endgame system in Honkai Impact, and hopefully you guys can see the sort of things that I would really love to see in Genshin Impact. So I'm just gonna throw us into the deep end, introduce a bunch of stuff, and give you a bit of in-game gameplay, and hopefully you can see sort of more or less where I get my perspectives for all of my videos. So let's just start it off. When you have an in-game system, you need some sort of talent trees that you can maximize, some sort of character specific sort of upgrades that you can choose. So this would be a reason for you to keep playing. You keep on playing, you struggle, you upgrade your characters are more powerful, you go back, and then you keep on fighting. That would be so awesome. Of course, when it comes to endgame, you want stage effects. You want to see when enemies are going to be stronger. You want to add a bit of buffs. You want to determine the difficulty score. So these are all very natural things that you can expect. And as well, as you can see on screen, there are some additional supporting items that I'm now going to pick. I'm going to pick now additional supporting units, and choosing the right unit for the right character actually makes a significant difference. Yeah, I'm just choosing an elf, don't worry about what else are. But the point here is you can see immediately there are so many levers that I can pull to adjust and to change my experience. So if I ever wanted a challenge, I can obviously adjust some of these things. Right, so how does the end game actually work now once you've gotten all of these sorts of things in mind? Well, it's pretty simple in Honkai Impact. You choose a buff straight in the beginning, you start fighting some enemies, and then you choose a buff again. And then you fight some more, you fight some boss enemies, and the whole idea behind this system is that in the beginning you don't start off with a lot of buffs, but you have to choose as you progress what kind of buffs you want to eventually stack. So you can see here I wanted to go on a path that after I complete the floor will give me a buff towards combo hits that my character can stack. So this is what we mean, and the idea is as I get more and more buffs, the enemies get more and high HP, more attack, so the stages themselves keep on getting harder and harder and harder. To give you a bit of a Genshin analogy, imagine someone has an entire team of C6 R5 characters and you immediately transport them to the highest difficulty level. Without any buffs, they would just be one-shotted. So this is the idea. So you would not be able to even come close to beating the highest difficulties without choosing buffs, and you would be forced to choose different buffs just so that you can make up the difficulty curve. So this is the idea. You battle some enemies. In this case it was pretty easy because we're still on the first floor. You get a buff, which you can see we're going to now pick from a certified list, and this is where a lot of strategy comes in. What kind of buffs should I choose? Should I choose this one? Should I choose another one? Etc, etc, and then you move on. So the strategy is not just in how you fight, but also in terms of how you set up and manage your sort of game or play experience. And this is what I think makes the system so much fun. The enemies scale progressively, but your character also progressively scales in power. And what's amazing about all of these buffs is how it can actually affect gameplay. So let's talk a bit about gameplay. So one of the things that you just saw on the previous floor was that we didn't have any countdown or anything like that, but suddenly now on screen you can see we do have a countdown, but it doesn't matter if this countdown goes to 0 because I'm not going to lose anything. I'm just going to lose a bonus reward. So this is what Honkai does so really well. Each point of the end game can either be one of three things. So you either have a limited time to defeat the enemy or you run in. So this is typically reserved for boss enemies, or you could have some of the floors have a bonus reward. So if you're fast enough, you get additional buffs and rewards, which will make it easier for you to keep on fighting. There is an incentive, in other words, for you to perform well, for you to understand what you're doing and how you should be playing. And then of course the majority of the floors have no timer whatsoever, so there's no such thing as you're not able to get a certain score because you don't have enough DPS or whatever. It's just just if you can get through these floors, you can build up your score, as you can see here on my screen in the top left hand corner. And obviously the higher your score, the higher your rewards. But a lot of the floors don't have any time requirement. You just need to be able to clear it. So this is what's so good. And with an endgame system, it's obviously not just all about the combat. Sometimes you need a bit of a break. So this is what you can see now on the floor. So instead of now going onto a floor with enemies, I'm actually going to go to a floor where there's a shop. And what's the point of a shop is that I can change my setup. So this is typical for these roguelike dungeon systems. You go to a shop, you change your setup, you can choose, you can buy, like, let's say, new buffs, you can upgrade some of your older buffs. This is really the essence of how a game structure like this can work. All of these things matter. So let's say you had a run where those little doors that pop up did not give you a good enough buff. Let's say you got really unlucky. Well, the cool thing about a store is that now whatever I couldn't get, or however bad the RNG was in terms of my run, I can actually make up for it in a certain sense by going to the store and buying certain buffs that I really want or really need for my character, and then of course upgrading some of the essential buffs that are really cool. So all of the buffs in the game, you can see there on some of them they've got like a +2 or a +3. All of them have a specific level, and you can upgrade these levels and make them even stronger. So suddenly there's a lot more strategy and thought into the game, and this is just what makes it exciting and a lot more replayable. And of course we're only using one out of many characters. You can just repeat all of this over and over with different characters. It's just so good. Right, so let's talk a bit about bosses and what's the point of having boss battles. Well, one of the cool things for me about Honkai is that boss battles are scattered between certain floors and so on, and they represent natural points that you can work towards. And also, if you do manage to beat the boss with a lot of HP, a lot of like special gimmicks and mechanics, what this means is that your score, which you can see there in the top right corner, the 9,900, significantly increases. So if you do beat the boss, you can actually get a significant jump in terms of your rewards, which is always nice. But it's not just about that. So these bosses have different mechanics. Some of them, like this one, has an energy shield. Some of them create clones. Some of them have multi-phases, so they're easier to take down, but because they've got multi-phases, it adds up to more overall time. This boss has got, I don't know if you've noticed, but there are actually two enemies here on the field. It's got like a helper enemy, which can actually be quite irritating and constantly like interrupt you with all its attacks. So there's lots of gimmicks and mechanics around this, but it just makes the game really replayable. And one of the interesting ways in which you can know whether you've successfully chosen the right boss for your character is to see how well you do against these bosses. I've had runs where I absolutely don't do any damage because as I started learning how new characters work and what kind of buffs they need, it was very obvious that the current strategy that I had chosen was just not good enough. But as you can see here in the background, the strategies and the way in which I've chosen my buffs and so on have been more than adequate. So whilst it's not going to be record setting, at least we can damage the enemies, and this is just what I kind of like, being able to get a different experience. And these enemies are not like Genshin enemies which attack once every 30 seconds. They are constantly attacking. This guy here in red that's attacking, he's constantly attacking, he's shooting missiles, he's just all over the place, and this is just what makes it so much fun. There's more interaction. You actually have to dodge. You can't just always be passive. You can see here there's just missiles raining down, and this is just what's so good. But yeah, with the Elysian Realm, there are obviously a lot of things happening. So if I can just explain in a bit more detail here, you can see obviously we have a score. That's on the bottom right hand corner. There's a number of combo hits. There's a couple of different meters here on the screen. There are different cooldowns. Everything is clear from that perspective. So as I'm playing this game, I'm constantly looking at what's my combo hits, when are they going to be reset for a buff, what are some of the cooldowns of my elves and like my other entities, what are my weapon active cooldowns, where's my health bar, what do I need to do, where's the boss, how do I need to dodge. So there's so much that just goes into one system, And I think that's what makes the combat exciting. There's so many levers, so many different ways in which you can experience it. And ultimately, that's what you want from an endgame mode. It's all about expanding the game, what we call like in a horizontal way. So you add more horizontal features, and that introduces more longevity and replayability. Right, so as we get into the conclusion of this video, it should be obvious that some people might say, well, hang on, what if I get bored of endgame? And yes, you can get bored of endgame, but here's my question. For something that's supposed to be just do your dailies and have like 30 to 40 minutes of fun, this is much better than just doing your dailies and logging off in Genshin Impact. And this is the point that I wanted to make. We don't want truly endless content, but at least we want something that's a bit more rewarding. And I think taking some inspiration from Honkai Impact and the way in which they've done it here is probably the best way we can do it. So that's just what I wanted to share in this video.